Can you guys hear me well? Yes? Closer? Better? Good. Sorry, we're a few minutes late. You know how these kind of things go. Please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Fernando Treviño. I'm the new, well, not that new, but anyway, the new Deputy Secretary for Environmental Justice with the DEP. And I'm really happy to be here with you to share some of the progress that we have made in order to develop the community fund. I don't want to start with thanking Roger and all of the staff of the Community College for hosting this meeting. We really appreciate it. Also, I don't want to start without thanking Riverwise and CBMAC for helping us, broadcast this online to make sure that more people can actually get the update that we're sharing. I know that we have a couple of elected officials. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Commissioner Manning, sorry. Thank you. Great meeting you. Thank you for being here. And I know that there's a lot of leaders here, so thank you for being here with us. I do have a couple of quick opening remarks just to set the context of the meeting. But at the same time, I want this to be an informal chat. The guys that I have met in the past know me, that I'm very informal, I'm very direct. So I want to keep an open and honest conversation with all of you and to be able to provide as much information as we can about the COA. The COA is the agreement that was signed between Shell and between DEP. Now, there's no news that you guys don't know. You guys are way more familiar about the situation that I am. So we know that this is a controversial issue. We know that this is an issue that has created a lot of controversy. So I would like to ask a favor, if everyone is okay with this, that let's try to keep this conversation around and about the Community Engagement Fund. I'm more than happy to stay after the meeting to talk to as many as you guys as possible. If you guys have any other comments, complaints about DEP, comments or complaints about Shell, anything that you want to share, I'm here to meet with you guys and to listen. I just want to be respectful of the time of some of you or most of you that are here to discuss the community fund. Also, I want to be respectful of the time of the folks looking at home that would like to hear the information that we're here to present. So let's do this. I'm gonna set up a couple of house rules, if you guys don't mind. Everyone is gonna be welcome to speak, to make comments, to ask questions. I'm gonna try to keep, like a soft club of around 3 minutes per speaker to continue and to make sure that the conversation advances. But if at the end we don't have any more questions and someone wants to come back to the mic and ask another question, more than happy to do it. And like I mentioned, a few minutes ago, let's try to be, let's try to be smart on how we're using the time to answer questions about the fund. With that said, you guys have seen the press release that went out a couple of days ago. We have created a steering committee that I will get more into the details, but thank you everyone of the members of the steering committee joining me here to be able to provide this information. So very quick, the background of this community mitigation fund happened after an agreement was signed between Shell and between DEP. As you know, there are two main financial components of the COA. One, it's the fine that was imposed on Shell, around $4.9 million, give and take. Out of that, as you guys know, Article 57 calls for up to 25% of that fine is made available to the local municipality, in this case, to Porter Township. We're not here to discuss that. This community fund, this steering committee has nothing to do with the fine. We have nothing to do with the 25% or how that money is going to be made. I'm happy to answer questions at the end, but I want to be honest, we don't know about that process. We haven't been involved in that process. We're here to chat about the second financial a component of the agreement, that is the $5 million community fund. So with that said, I have had the opportunity to meet with a lot of you. I know that I haven't met with all of the groups. I apologize for that. We haven't had the time to do it. I know that I have missed a lot of people. I know that I have missed a lot of organizations. I know that I have missed a lot of elected officials. I acknowledge that. But my intention was to be very specific to do outreach with the community. How this steering committee was created is that after many meetings, I received suggestions and recommendations, around 34 to 35 names from different leaders, from different community members. Yes, Shell sent some recommendations, and yes, my office, or our office, DP's office in Pittsburgh, sent also recommendations. And out of that list of 34 candidates, I reviewed the list, and securing diversity and representation in terms of industry, expertise, regional representation, and demographic representation as well, I chose a list of 16 finalists to be part of this steering committee. That list was reviewed by an internal working group that DP created from different departments. Once we clear those names, I reach out to every of them, I send the invitations, and all of them agreed to be here. So you have 2, 4, 7 in front of you. We have a few other members of the committee sitting amongst you, and I am the 17th member of the community. As you know by now, there is no staff from Shell represented in the steering committee, and I am the only staffer from DP represented in the committee. This has been a community-driven process. It will continue to be a community-driven process, and my role is literally say this, is talk to you guys and facilitate the conversation amongst the 16 members. With that said, our job for this steering committee is not to decide how the money is going to be spent or where the money is going. We are not evaluating projects. We're not making that decision. We're just designing the process to apply for that funding. That process will be published in 2 documents. By the end of next week, we're going to have the community fund protocol that will include basically the what and who can apply, what kind of programs and who can apply for the funding. It's gonna have just the general guidelines of who will be managing the money, the trust that will be created on the legal side to manage the money, but specifically to give us a guideline or who can apply and what kind of projects. A few weeks later, we are going to make public what we're calling, let me just make sure that I don't misquote my lawyers. Yes, the protocol implementation plan. That basically is the how, the process that we're going to follow on how people can apply for that funding. Excuse me for 1 second. So when that happens, this steering committee will end its job. We're going to convene a new advisory committee or advisory board that will be in charge of receiving the applications, reviewing the projects, and ultimately recommending which projects should be funded. The way that we're going to select that advisory board is going to be basically the same way that we selected this steering committee. I'm going to have as many meetings as I can with you guys. I'm going to have a second and a third round of conversations with Shell, with elected officials now, with other members of the community, with the same steering committee, and I'm going to collect suggestions, and we're going to follow the same process to identify a new advisory board that the specific job will be to implement the process that we get to design. With that said, let me just very quickly give you some of the elements of the protocol, where we are, and then more than happy just to open the floor for questions and answer any questions that you may have. The COA specifically asks for projects to benefit health, environment, and quality of life in the community. We wanted to be vague with that language because it's not up to us to decide what kind of projects should be funded. It's up to you guys. So as long as the projects qualify within those three elements, the projects are going to qualify. With one exception, in this case, it's going to be two exceptions. The agreement between both parties recognizes the importance of having independent and regular air quality monitoring. So the COA specifically says that DEP may require at least one project to fund that, and the steering committee has agreed with that. So we will be funding at least one project to specifically monitor independent and a regular basis air quality. At the same time, the steering committee recognized the importance of having this community outreach, community involvement. So we are recommending that at least one project that will be targeting community education and engagement to, strategically decide what, projects could be or what ideas could benefit the quality of life of the community will be funded as well. So we want to have that balance. Other than that, we are open to, or the new advisory board will be open to receive any kind of projects as long as they fit under the qualifications of a project to benefit health, environment, or quality of life. The next question that we have gotten pretty often and decided is that the steering committee has decided that every project should be based in Beaver County. I know that there are communities affected by this outside of Beaver County. We cannot deny that. But at the same time, the steering committee has recognized that even when $5 million sounds like a lot of money, it's really not that much for this kind of work. So we need to prioritize which communities have been affected the most. We are not saying that communities outside of Beaver County are not affected. We are not saying that they shouldn't be part of a similar process like this. But the steering committee is recognizing that in order to prioritize the most affected communities, at least the first initial qualifying factor should be projects happening inside of Beaver County. Let me go back to my notes. Just like we have three specific projects that or categories that we want to fund, the steering committee has also recognized that there has to be some limitations and some disqualifying factors for specific projects. This has to be about benefiting the community directly. So projects that target lobbying are not going to be accepted. Projects that target direct advocacy against any other organization or any of the parties of the COA or any elected officials, any kind of direct advocacy is not going to be funded. Projects to fund legal representation are not going to be funded. This is not for that. And at the end, an idea that I haven't been able to share with the steering committee, to be honest, is that after speaking with a couple of members of my legal team in DEP, we want to include an extra provision to say, and this hasn't been decided, so my apologies, but we just want to make very clear to say that we are not going to fund projects that promote or foster hate, racism, violence, stuff like that. So that's, again, it goes without saying, but still, the lawyers are recommending me to include it. So we're going to go with that at least. So those are going to be the specific projects that won't be part of this community fund. The last big element of how of this protocol that will be issued again in the next couple of weeks is who can apply. And just as the projects will be, specifically for Beaver County, only organizations based in Beaver County can apply, with the exception that outside organizations may apply for funding if they're seeking funding, as long as they partner with a local organization. And the level of partnership, the meaningful level of that partnership, will obviously be part of the deciding factor to do it. So we don't want to exclude anyone. Obviously, the idea of keeping it to Beaver County is because, we don't want the advocacy organization based in Philadelphia or the political organization based in Harrisburg trying to claim that they have an interest in Beaver County and coming here and trying to take some of that money and use it in the community. But at the same time, the steering committee recognized that there are very good and very invested community organizations based, in Allegheny County, in Pittsburgh, around the area, that have experience working in the area, that have staff working in the area. So we want to recognize that. So instead of just excluding them, the steering committee has decided to let them apply as long as there is a partnership with a local community. Other than that, I think that, am I missing something, members of the steering committee, something that we have agreed? There are some decisions that we have made that will be included in the implementation document, right? But for now, this is where we're moving forward with the protocol. The protocol is not final. The idea of having this meeting is to identify, not only to answer your questions, but to get feedback of things that we may include in the protocol or in the protocol implementation plan. But I have spoken for 14 minutes already. So do you guys need to add or would like to add anything before we move to questions of the public? The timeline? So we're still going back and forth with the specific timeline on how to roll this out. We don't have a final timeline, but an approximate timeline is that within 2 or 3 weeks after we announce the protocol, we will announce the implementation plan. Potentially, we're going to spend 6 to 8, maybe around 6 to 8 weeks informing the community, hosting public events, informing about the process, hosting meetings with potential applicants to answer questions. And once that process is ended, we're going to have another 6 to 8 weeks for a window to receive applications, right? So we're going to have at least 6, hopefully 8 weeks for organizations to actually file and present their projects. Then we're going to take approximate 4 to 5 weeks to review the projects, maybe to have a couple of public meetings to share with you some of the projects that have been presented. And if I am a little bit flexible with the schedule, I think that we can have final recommendations by early to mid-December on which projects should be funded, or at least the first round of funding. And knocking on wood, we're going to do our best to issue the first, just to issue the initial funds for projects before the end of the year. Yep.
I just want to state that there's 2 things that it might not have been clear about what the steering committee made a decision on. That are legally based, not steering committee decision. One is that it has to be based in environmental health, quality of life, and public health. So those are things that were in the legal decision when they made that agreement with Shell, with DEP, and not the steering committee. So we can't change that. Additionally, the no lobbying and advocacy and that kind of work against the petrochemical industry was also a decision that's legally based that we cannot change as a steering committee. So if people have issues with that kind of language, it's unfortunately was not part of our decision making.
Yeah, thank you, Heather, for that clarification. Yes, we are acting, we were conform, we are moving ahead based on a legal agreement that was signed between DEP and COA, and Shell. And some of these elements are already included in that in that agreement, including, to be honest, my participation. I'm here sitting with you guys because the agreement specifically points that my office should be helping the process and facilitating the process. So with that said, again, I'm going to keep very soft time limits. So I want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to to speak. More than happy to stay at the end to have another conversation about other topics not related to the community fund. If someone wants to continue speaking and one has another question, please, let's be respectful of everyone. Let everyone first speak, and then that person can come back and have another go at asking a question. And two, even when I'm sure that you guys already know, but two housekeeping announcements that I forgot. I apologize. Most of you guys already saw there are some refreshment in the back. The restrooms are outside to the left, in front of the entry of the building. And I was told by the security staff that apparently there are very heavy thunderstorms in the forecast for later tonight. There may be the possibility that suddenly we lose electricity. If that happens, don't panic. Emergency lights will come on. The doors will lock, the outside doors, but we have security that will open and will be able to facilitate. We're not trying to keep you here. We're not shutting anyone down. Just want to give that extreme direction that, apparently the forecast could get really bad later today. So I want to be fair and honest with everyone. With that said, the mic is yours.
There's a quick question for those of you who are on Zoom. And if you happen to be on Zoom or we're trying to monitor 3 or 4 different feeds at once. So we'll do our best on Facebook Live. But feel free to send a question in the chat. And I think we have some folks here from DEP monitoring that. And at the appropriate time, we'll feed those up to Fernando or the steering committee. Bear with us. This is our first go at streaming from 5 or 6 different locations at one time, but we'll get there.
Thank you. And I think that we also have index cards outside, and if not, we can pass them. If you guys want to write, your questions and pass them to us as well, we can do that. I'm going to put her on the spot just because she's walking right now. That's Amelia Benson. She is the new Environmental Justice Coordinator based in the Southwest. She's going to be working in this project in addition to a couple of other things, full time. So she will be our local person working on this. Amelia, do you have the index cards? Do you need them? I have some with me in case that. Sure. Cool. See, this is that kind of informal. Let's just have it there. So please, the mic is yours. Yeah. If you want to, form a line behind the mic, let's have a chat.
Hi, my name is Carrie Pohl. I'm with the Sisters of St. Joseph of Baden, Pennsylvania, and I live in Aliquippa. First of all, Mr. Trevino, I'd like to thank you for being here and for opening this forum up for conversation. And I would like to thank all of the committee members for stepping up and volunteering your time, your energy, your thinking, everything that is going into this process. I appreciate you. I'm wondering, why does Shell get so much influence? I understand that there's part of the fine that they get to determine where it goes, and then they were able to submit names for this committee because, contrary to what the Beaver County Times reported yesterday, this isn't an investment. This is the result of polluting our community. And so is there a way that any funding, anything from this fine that ends up in our community, is there a way to make it very clear that it is not because of the beneficence of Shell that we're receiving it?
So, the agreement, it's a legal agreement between both parties, and the agreement calls for a collaboration between Shell and DEP. So that's, like Heather was mentioning, one of the stuff that we don't have control over it. I want to be fair to all of the parties here and say that just as DEP doesn't have any staffer beyond me facilitating this, Shell doesn't have any staffer in the steering committee. Yes, they suggested some names as well as DEP, but I can guarantee you, and the steering committee knows, that the members of the steering committee recommended and suggested by the community outweighed by a lot the members that were recommended by Shell or DEP, right? This is I'm trying to be as objective and as I can, putting both DEP and Shell as the signatures of the COA at the same level. So the legal document asks for a collaboration, but they don't have any active role as far as I know. Well, I don't know if there's anyone from Shell in the public, but they are not here. They haven't been part of our meetings. And yes, they appointed a couple of members to the committee because it's a collaboration, but the members that were suggested by the public, by the community, outweighed by a lot those members. How the money is going to be used, how of that, again, what happens with the fine and that kind of, it's something that it's out of our control. But at least I can tell you, and I have everyone sitting here, that that community-driven process is taking place, and that Shell doesn't have an overdue influence on this, and neither DEP. Yeah. I'm gonna.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I want to thank Sister Carrie for her comment. It's a really important point. It's one of the biggest concerns that I've already brought up as part of this committee. What I will say is there have been no constraints on any of the steering committee members here about speaking about exactly that point. Meaning, as this process unfolds, we're able to communicate and make it clear that this is the result of an agreement associated with harms to the community, that it is a result of pollution events and community harms, and it is a way to try to mitigate that in some way, although it's probably not nearly far enough that many of us would think, but it's something, and we want to make sure that the environmental justice communication on it comes through, and so you can count on us to make sure that can happen.
And thank you, Matt, for that, because I totally forgot. The protocol will include a disclaimer that it says that every advertising, every promotion of the projects being funded with the community fund, that money is coming from a legal agreement that Shell signed because of violations to the grant. So we're not going to be able to go out there and do what a lot of people here would like to do, right? But the disclaimer for every project will include that statement that the project is being funded or the money comes from an agreement where Shell recognizes violations of the air quality. So, of course.
Hi, I'm Sister Sarah. We're all Sisters of St. Joseph here tonight. Anyone want to sign up, see me? And I live in Ambridge. And I was just a little confused by what you said about the categories of funding. One of the elements you're going to fund is an entity that will oversee. Could you just repeat that? And it confused me a little.
And maybe sorry for not clarity. So just as the COA calls for the possibility of funding at least one project to monitor air quality, the steering committee wants to make sure that there's also at least one project that works with the community to do community education, engagement, that there's a process established to identify and to work on quality of life issues. I don't know, Daniel, if you want to elaborate a little bit more. But this is not creating an entity. There's going to be plenty of organizations, submitting projects to work on quality of life. What we are doing is that at least one project should be targeting community education, civic engagement, stuff like that.
So education about what? That's my final thing.
Once again, that's open to, yeah. Now, obviously, a bigger consideration will be education about the environment, education about health, education about quality of life. But again, that's not up to us to decide. We really want to be open for you guys to submit ideas, to be creative with those ideas, and then the new advisory board will take those into consideration. Of course. Hi.
Good evening. My name is Donald Inman. I'm the board chair of the Beaver County Industrial Museum, also vice president of the board of Patterson Township Commissioners. But I'm here tonight basically for information, but particularly for the museum. 20 years ago, we started a group, incorporated, and we tried to preserve as much of Beaver County industrial history as possible, okay? We've got hundreds of thousands of photographs. We've got all kinds of memorabilia. We've got things even stored around the county. We have a speed pulpit out of the strip mill and all kinds of things. Anyway, we were at Geneva College, and then they wanted the house that we were in, so we left and put everything in trailer trucks and stored it. And to make a long story short, we ended up buying a house in Darlington, Pennsylvania, which is a small community. And did that next to the Little Beaver Historical Society, where is the oldest building in Beaver County and a lot of other issues. We've put in for a grant for Pennsylvania 250 to build a new museum. We're just completely out of room. We have stuff stored all over the place. And anyway, we've been very successful. We've had people from all over the world. We've had people from Germany. We've had people it's just amazing that they found out about through the internet, and would come to our museum. We we think we have a fairly good chance on the grant. However, we need about $150,000 for site development. We've discovered that once we bought it and whatnot, now that we wanted to see if we could build on next to it, because we got acreage next to it, our building is out of the floodplain, but where we want to build right next to it is in a floodplain. So we've got to raise the ground up about this much, and we've got to do that. And so I'm just wondering what our chances of getting something like that, because what I need to do, first of all, is probably get a contractor to give me a real bid. We know it's about at least 100,000. We think it could be as much as 150. And so that the request would be accurate. And plus, what I also want to make sure is if you think you're willing to fund something like that. Now, it helps tourism. It's definitely going to help the little community. There's no question, And it is environmental as well, because we can't build unless we actually fix that. So anyway, basically, that's my question. I was just wondering what our chances were.
Thank you. To be honest, I don't know, because this body will not decide where the money goes. My recommendation would be, present a project proposal, make a strong case for that your project will benefit the quality of life in Beaver County, and then it's going to be up to the advisory board to recommend yes or no.
Luke Barradelli, I live in Brighton Township. My question is pretty simple. Have you guys considered yet what sort of brackets or amounts that you're looking to do? Like, are you going to try and get 20 smaller wins for approval? Maybe 2 big ones, like 2 $500,000, and then a whole bunch of other small. Like, have you guys considered that yet and had conversations? And if so, where are you leaning towards as it relates to that?
So we have had conversations. We haven't come up with a final recommendation or final decision that will be included in the protocol implementation plan. If you have any strong opinion about it, or if you have any recommendation, you have 2 minutes to make your case. But we have talked about it, but we haven't come up with a final solution.
I think all of us could make a case for one big, large lump sum winner, right? And we could all make the case because there's enough opportunity out there that someone or some organization has a great idea and they need some funding. And we could all make the case as well that, hey, there's 50 opportunities that we could fund with this. So I really don't have a recommendation, but I just wanted to see where your heads were, if you've had those conversations yet, and where you're leaning towards, maybe personally or amongst the group.
So there has been very strong arguments on both cases, on identifying maybe 20 potential opportunities of X amount of money versus not putting any specific caps on it. The conversations are ongoing. The steering committee is leaning on not having a cap for any program. So a small community group can apply for 50,000. Or a large project of 1 million could be funded. But again, we're not going to be making that decision in terms of what projects are funded, but the steering committee is leaning on not putting a cap on that. And again, that will be included not in the protocol document that will come out next week, but in the implementation plan that will come out in the next 3 or 4 weeks.
My name's Daniel Rossi Keen, Executive Director of an organization called Riverwise. We work with a number of different, primarily nonprofits, but community organizations around the county. This question for me is actually tremendously important. And it hinges for me on this question of what we actually mean by community fund. A place like Beaver County has a lot of relatively early stage or low capacity organizations. Many of the folks represented in this room run some of those organizations. If you told them they had to figure out how to absorb $500,000 worth of a grant, in their next fiscal year, that would be prohibitively overwhelming. So I will just say from my vantage point, as this conversation arises, I'm continually pushing for as inclusive a process as possible that allows the kinds of organizations that inhabit a place like Beaver County to be able to make the strongest case possible for the level of funding that's most appropriate for their organizational sort of life cycle. And so, yeah, thought it might be useful to share at least some thinking on that.
Yeah. Am I out of time?
Yes, but go ahead. If you want, you have another question? Go ahead.
I don't want to be selfish. I'll circle back.
Thank you. Great first example. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Let me get organized here, because I have to kind of say what I wrote.
I'm not going to start your clock until you're ready. Can someone help her, please?
I call it the cane mutiny because it just keeps falling for me all the time. All right. Okay. Come on now. I don't know who I am. When I'm here, I'm Dylan Weiss. That is my pen name. I'm an author. My name is Gail Neustadt, otherwise on my birth certificate. I want to thank the DEP for stepping up and having this community meeting, and I would like to thank the committee for all their hard work. Oh, okay. Am I loud enough? All right. So I wrote this afternoon, thinking about, I don't live in Beaver County, I'm in Sewickley, but the wind blows and the water flows. So I have the concern, I've always been involved in environmental causes for the last 18 years. The $5 million consent order agreement imposed by the PADEP upon Shell must address the following issues which directly affect the quality of life, health, and environment: air monitoring, noise monitoring, water monitoring, emergency management training, and personal protective equipment. To do this properly and with complete transparency, the PADEP must conduct ongoing inspections based on Edward Deming's 14-step process for quality management. In a simple, understandable 2-step statement, my mom explained it to me this way, quote from my mother: "You can't correct a mistake until you recognize it and learn from your mistakes." That's how I grew up, and it's time for Dutch Shell to grow up. The DEP must conduct independent inspections regularly with reports available to the public. For example, since Shell has been so egregious in the frequency and severity of its performance, I would recommend daily inspections with reports to the public within 24 hours of completion and/or sooner if there is an immediate emergency. Such inspections must be based on quality indicators that capture data on air emissions, noise levels, and water conditions, including all measurable harmful elements. Additionally, quality indicators based on outcomes must be developed adequately to measure any and all training programs. Such training programs should include selecting and training first responders and the community requiring personal protective equipment. The COA dollars must be spent on the purchase of equipment that will adequately measure air, noise, and water quality, and equipment needed to adequately train any and all responders, including first responders like firefighters, community dwellers, both children and adults, as well as workers at the Shell plant. Thank you so much for listening to my talk.
Thank you. Right on time. And yes, most of those projects could qualify based on the protocol that we're developing. So thank you for.
So I just want one more comment.
Please.
There is going to be money needed to train on how to do a 14-step Deming quality assurance study with indicators.
Yeah, again, not this body or the advisory committee will be creating programs, right? An organization based here in Beaver County will have to present the project in order to be funded. So we're not driving that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Board.
Good
Thanks a
evening.
lot for being here and letting the community actually have a say for a change. One of the things I'd like to point out is the front page of the Beaver County Times. And everyone can see the headlines. It says an investment in the community in parentheses instead of a question mark. Because as you can see, there's a smokestack with a huge fire and black smoke coming off of that, which is a blatant violation of Pennsylvania law. I'd like to see the money being invested in the community. And this toxic sky dumping, which this picture describes in vivid color, poisons our community. I don't think anybody could deny that. And a fine has never been a deterrent. This is a serious problem here in Pennsylvania. And especially now that the people that have to live here and put up with this violation of law, and it doesn't seem like we have any real time no one being held responsible for that. A lot of people don't know about our rights in our Constitution in Pennsylvania, but I'd like to point out one that really carries a lot of weight. I call it the most important right in our Constitution. And that's our environmental rights. We have a right to clean air, water, and land for us and also for future generations. Who cares if you got a gun if you can't breathe? I think these things need to be talked about, and we have to put things in the right perspective. And we know that corporations only operate with a permit from the government. That seems to be the point that we as a society can control all things that go wrong. You know, if you're speeding or drunk driving, you have a permit to drive a vehicle. What do? They take your permit off of you. And this should hold true for all corporations that pollute and poison people. This is a crime. One of the things I heard people say they wanted to spend this money on was to build a playground. But the area they were talking about in Potter Township is next to a toxic emitter. And that's the wrong spending of the fine money. I wouldn't want to take little kids down there and play on swings.
Your time is up. I'm going to let you finish your thought very quickly, please, and then you can come back later.
Okay, so we need health studies to prevent illness and death to be implemented. Healthcare is expensive, and money to cover these costs have to be available free of charge. And the main thing is, what are we going to do about this? I call it the flat tire syndrome. You get a flat tire, you pull off the road, you fix it before you get going again. That doesn't seem to be the situation down here. They're still emitting.
Okay, thank you for your comment. There are a couple of questions online, but please go ahead, sir, and then we can go back to John.
Okay, my name is Bob Nishikawa, EM. I'm from Pittsburgh, but I'm reading this on behalf of Mark Dixon, who's also a resident of Pittsburgh and a local air quality expert. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here because there wasn't enough advance notice for him to juggle his schedule. So he asked me to read this on his behalf. In my opinion, it makes sense for the penalty money paid by Shell to be primarily devoted towards these three essential efforts. 1, measurement of pollution coming from Shell. 2, reducing the harm done by any pollution coming from Shell. And 3, educating community members about the pollution coming from Shell and how to protect themselves from related harm. In order to support these efforts, at least 20 real-time monitors similar to the CAMs, continuous air monitoring systems, devices ought to be installed around the fence line around Shell and also in the communities living nearby. In addition to the CAMs, real-time particle monitors, PM 2.5 and PM 10, should be set up around Shell's fence line and also within the community. And to the extent that funds allow, real-time monitoring of specific chemicals like benzene, toluene, and formaldehyde ought to be included in the monitoring system. Placement should be designed to assess where pollution is coming from. That is multiple concentric circles of monitors around likely emission sites with multiple monitors between Shell and non-Shell sources of pollution. Schools should also be prioritized as monitor sites. The monitor data ought to be made publicly available in near real time, that is within 2 minutes of the measurement being taken, in both human readable and computer readable formats so that community members have up-to-date information and can act accordingly to protect themselves if pollution levels are high. Education materials and programming should be distributed to help community members understand what the monitor information means and how to protect themselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. Do we have a question online?
Yeah, we have several, and then one person with their hand raised. So let me go through these one sec. The first question is, will the DEP and the steering committee establish processes to enforce ethical practices that the funded projects and prohibit self-dealing or self-promotion of services of individuals or organizations?
Yes, the implementation protocol plan will have disclaimers and specific requirements that made it very clear that what kind of projects will be funded. And there will be also an element of reporting and monitoring on how the funds will be used.
Should I keep going through all the questions? Or do we wanna...
Let's go here and then we can go back.
Sounds good.
Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Diane Peterson. I want to thank you, first of all, for asking us how we want this money spent. I really want to thank you for that. Shell has harmed us and is harming us still. He's harming this community, its inhabitants, our air, our water, and literally our chance for our future as it creates plastic by fracking, using fracked ethane, and creating a product that's harming us in a major way. But that's a topic for another time. I spent the last 2 days not preparing this, as you'll see shortly, but in trying to get the word out. You gave us 4 days notice. So I went on Facebook, and it has the potential for over 20,000 people to see a post telling them to come here. I sent out emails for hundreds of people. The people that wrote me back said this: oh my God, in 4 days notice, I can't be there. I really wish I had a way to tell them what I want to say. So that is my first request. Can you have another meeting? Can you have a virtual meeting for those who don't feel comfortable during COVID times to be here? Can you have an email and a real address where people can send in their comments? Shell has harmed these people let's give them more than 4 days to actually put their thoughts together and get them to you. So that's request number 1. Like I said, thank you immensely for having us here. And I am thankful that this fine has been levied, but let's be honest. Shell International, in the calendar year that just ended in March 2023, made $392 billion. We are asking a fine of 4.7 million, is that correct?
I think that is 4.9, but
Okay, so my math will be slightly askew, but bear with me. If it was indeed 4.7 million, that would mean they would be paying a penalty of 0.001 percentile of what they earned. A thousandth of a percentile of what they earned. That's operating expenses, that's not a fine. That doesn't mean diddle. It's just the cost of doing business. And even if the fines were in the billions, not millions, billions with a B, nothing brings back the health of these people that were harmed. So my third request, going forward, if Shell Ethane plastic making plant is not in compliance, yes, let's issue another hefty fine. Yeah, great. But most importantly, shut down operations immediately until they can become compliant. Okay, now the question you asked me about, how to spend the money. Not anything. So here's what not to spend the money on. Please, nothing that promotes Shell as a good neighbor, because they've been anything but a good neighbor. So anything that puts their name on it, no. Anything that allows them to say, look at how nice we are. We have monitors. We have education. We have 24/7 hotline. No. What I would like to see, and no advertising with Shell's name on, no parks, no trails, no Shell name on anything. But what I'd like to see their name on is some information that is approved by you guys, you 19 people, not by Shell, that has to go out to the public saying what they did and what they were fined for. I want to see that made very public. I want to see some money into advertising that said, this is what we did. And no pretty stuff, no advertising. Okay, now what you really asked me for, how to spend
just very
money.
quickly because your time is up,
Okay,
please.
so monitoring, continuous and accessible to the public in real time. Fence line, minimum standard, what Shell already has, but hopefully even better. They have 4, let's get 20. I'd like to see fence line monitoring and monitoring in the community. So near schools and near places where people live, because air doesn't always take a direct path. I'd like to see monitors with placement so that we know the source of the pollution. It may not be Shell, believe it or not. We want to measure the VOC as a group, but it's not enough. Because some VOCs, none of them are great, but some of them are damn nasty. Excuse my French.
I'm sorry, I really need you to finish your comment. You can come back once
I will come back
the other
and
folks.
finish.
Please,
Thank you.
please, thank you. Do we want to go to another question online and then we can come back to?
Yep.
Please.
So I think this question was already answered, but I'll ask it anyway so that this person knows that it was asked. Has it been determined what range of funding will be available for projects that are accepted? Or asking in a similar question in a different way, how many different projects will be funded?
Not finally decided yet. We're leaning on no caps or no specific range of funding and no specific number of projects, with the exception of the 2 projects that I mentioned before. And again, we haven't identified those projects, right? It's at least a project that does it. Yeah.
Okay, hello. My name is Jim Fabizek, and I'm here sort of representing, I guess, the University of Pittsburgh. I live in Pittsburgh. I do not live in Beaver County, although as a researcher at the university, we have projects that are ongoing throughout Southwest Pennsylvania, including some in Beaver County. I just wanted to sort of make a pitch to elevate the concept of public health in any of these particular proposals that you would be evaluating. I know that there are several names on this board that I recognize as being part of environmental organizations. There was only one name that sort of had any affiliation with any health organization, and I'm not saying that I know that individual's qualifications. I was pleased to see that you'll be forming some sort of evaluating committee that will evaluate the proposals, and I would suggest that you have a public health presence in that, okay? And I know that at one time, Beaver County was actually thinking of creating their own county health department. There are only 2 or 3 counties in all of Pennsylvania that have one. That, at least to me, illustrates the importance of having a public health presence in a county like Beaver that has a lot of public health issues that it's facing. So I would sort of say that you could entertain your proposal descriptions as you write up an RFA or whatever, to think about things about how health can be incorporated, expand or create disease registries that target those most at risk from either the pollution from the Shell plant or any other sources of pollution in the area. Create a core of community public health workers that could act as first responders at the level of health to sort of go out and address community needs and help interpret what might be a lot of this air pollution monitoring data that you are accumulating, but being able to translate that and create a sort of connection to whether or not there was an adverse health effect or not. So that.
Thank you for your comment. 2 quick things. One, most of those projects would qualify to receive funding based on quality of health. And 2, please take my business card. We'd love to have a follow-up. And if you want to recommend members for the advisory board, we'll be more than happy to have that call.
Okay.
Thank you.
Another question.
Yes, please.
Will a community's location in relation to the plant and experience of downwind air quality and light pollution be considered when evaluating projects, and or what quantity of resources go to which location in Beaver County?
Yes, again, the protocol has established and will establish that the funds will stay in Beaver County, the projects will do. The protocol implementation plan will have the specific details on how projects will be elevated. And one of those, how projects will be evaluated. And one of those elements will be the specific location, environmental justice communities, impacted communities, etc. So yeah.
Hi, my name is Skylar Bremmeyer. I'm from Vanport, PA. In terms of project funding, Beaver County historically has a lot of Indigenous people, Native American names. Primarily when the railroads came through here, they decided to kind of just randomly name different towns and districts after various famous Native American warriors, chiefs, and people in general. But I feel like there's a real big disconnect between the ontologies of Beaver County, particularly since the Industrial Revolution, and kind of the notion that we honor the Indigenous peoples from this area, particularly like the Lenape tribes, also referred to as the Delaware, and a lot of Iroquois who are over this area. I was wondering if in terms of funding, like an indigenous food forest, which is also like a medicinal garden, essentially growing plants that were once native to the area, or even invasive plants that were utilized by the Native Americans once we brought them over here, that have medicinal compounds that can actually mitigate a lot of the chronic inflammation and ailments associated with VOC pollution and just an industrial polluted history in general. Would something like that maybe qualify for funding?
Again, we're not going to decide right on the specific project, but if a project like that is proposed and makes the case that benefits environment or the health, I don't see why it wouldn't qualify. But again, we're not going to be making that decision. Yeah.
One of the things I have continued to say as a part of this committee is I want to help develop a process that is intrinsically beneficial for Beaver County, that doesn't just discharge $5 million in a way that makes us temporarily feel seen or heard, but that actually grows our community's capacity to advocate for themselves, to organize on behalf of interests that are important to us, that enlivens our imagination and our vision for something different in our communities. And so as you ask that question, I'm up here super excited, and I want to say, man, Skylar, this is an awesome opportunity for you to go back in the, the basement of the library or wherever it is you sit and think, and, make a robust argument for why what you just described is of vital importance to the future health of Beaver County. I mean, I hope that out of this, we've got a million proposals that emerge in Beaver County, most of which won't be funded, but all of which have the capacity to move forward our ability to see something different for our communities. And so that's what I'm really hopeful and encouraged about in this process. And let me know when you're going to open your garden. I'm going to come.
Right on, Daniel. That's encouraging. One more small question too, if that's fine. This is more geared towards the DEP. As many have said, the citations and fines ultimately amount to no mitigation. Like no matter how many environmental and mitigation projects we implement, I feel like it's just a dog chasing its own tail in terms of keeping up with pollution and the collection of it. So is it the general consensus of the Southwest DEP that the only true mitigation is mitigation of production?
I'm not an expert to answer that question, to be honest, but happy to have a follow-up and point you in the right direction. I wouldn't even dare to start trying to answer it. I want to be honest with you.
That's fair. Thanks.
Thank you.
I also wanted to add to that, as the president of the college, my science club would love to work with you on that project. It ties education and young people directly in research, and it's a marvelous idea. So I did want to say that.
Thank you. Do we want to go to another?
Yeah, we have plenty of questions on here,
Sure.
so I can just keep them going. But I'll just do one right now. What governance will be established to monitor and assure that the steering committee developed processes are fair, based upon established facts, and properly reflect the best interests of all Beaver County, not just a few special interest organizations or individuals?
In an ideal world, yes. But we don't live in an ideal world. It's going to be very difficult to create a committee to monitor the committee, because then we need a committee to monitor the committee that's monitoring us. That's why we are putting this on you guys. Once again, this is not DEP designing the process. This is not Shell designing the process. This is you guys designing the process. Could it be better? Probably. Could we have more time to share more information with you? We should. But the reality is that we needed to move very, very fast on putting this together. So.
There's one quick question is there going to be a transcript of tonight's meeting available for the public to review? And I believe the answer is not word for word transcript, but we are recording this and there will be notes. Is that correct? Yes, that is correct. Awesome. Potentially something more
Amelia's happy on that because she doesn't need to do that.
Okay.
Please go ahead. Sorry.
Hi, my name is Jeff Karwoski, and I'm representing Reforest Our Future. We're a nonprofit that focuses on forest restoration in Beaver County and abroad, and also environmental education. So, I got interested to come to this meeting when I heard that, things like environmental education, were going to come to the forefront. But, I think, potential recipients of the grant, educating people is great, but I also think that the educational components of the recipients need to have an actionable element, that we're not just sitting down and talking, that we're actually doing things. The way I see things now is we're kind of pointing the finger at Shell, and I get that that's what we're here to do, but I mean, we have to point the finger at ourselves too. And we all have to take responsibility for environmental issues here. We can't just look and go, that's the big bad wolf, they're the bad people, we're the good people. We were negatively affected, because we do things that negatively affect ourselves. So we have to change that as well. And I think that we could use this granting opportunity to do that. But the trick is that we have to be so careful, because, if I had to guess, I would guess that Shell probably made $5 million in the time that we've been standing around talking here. So it's meaningless to them. You know, what we're doing is you know, if you get this $5 million and then it just filters through your fingers like grains of sand, I mean, that's what Shell wants. So I think it's important that the recipients of the grant have to have some long-lasting components that can go on, you know, kind of like teaching a man to fish. Okay, I could give me $100,000 and I'll go buy a bunch of food and then I'll feed a bunch of people. Okay, that's great. I made them healthy, but for how long? Well, not as long as building a $100,000 garden and education center. So I think we need to look at projects that have, you know, forward-thinking components that can go beyond, that can continue to impact the community like for years to come. You know, and I was thinking that this needs to have a continued awareness of like what we're doing here. So would it be possible that the grant recipients were reporting their actions, and that these actions, you know, not just reported to the committee, but reported to the community? So we take all the recipients, be they awarded $1,000 or $1 million, and we focus on those organizations, and we continue to update the community on what these organizations are doing, so that we're using this like $5 million to bring environmental concerns to the forefront of the people of Beaver County.
Thank you for your comment. I took a lot of notes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Should I go ask one?
Sure, please.
Okay.
Let's just go one-on-one if you don't mind.
Great. Has it been considered to wait until project applications are in to determine what amounts are available for each project to ensure that enough quality projects are available to warrant each funding range?
To some degree, it has been considered, but again, we haven't made a final decision in terms of capping any projects. Once again, we are leaning towards not having any kind of caps to, you know, make sure we're accommodating that specific point as well. So.
Ready? Hi, my name is Richard Dupree. I'm a resident of Brighton Township, and I work with several nonprofits in the county. When I read the Beaver County Times and about what the meeting, what was going on, it talked about the purpose of the funds was to improve the quality of life of the residents of Beaver County. That's a really broad area. You know, I could buy a pair of shoes for everybody in Beaver County. I could buy bicycles, or I could plant a garden. I could, you know, do all kinds of things. And I'm wondering, has DEP ever done anything like this before, where a chemical plant or some plant has had a consent decree, money's been released, and community groups have done certain kinds of things? Just could we get some examples of what kind of things might be funded, or what other people have done before? Just kind of give us a little better sense than anything that helps the community.
So I have been 4 months with DEP. So in my 4 months, no. But look, in all seriousness, there has been similar, but nothing like this before, right? There's a concept of a community a project that sometimes where a company is fined, instead of paying cash, they propose a specific project to benefit the community. And they work with DEP to develop the project, and then they implement the project. But this is the actual company doing it, right? Okay. We were mentioning at the beginning of the conversation that based on Article 57, up to 25% of the fine itself, it's made available to the local municipality to run community to benefit the community projects to benefit the community. I'm sorry. The complaint that we have received sometimes is that, I'm not saying this is the case, I'm not in charge of that, but we have received complaints other times that maybe the municipality really is very flexible on the definition of quality of life, and they spend the money in stuff that the community doesn't need. But that's based on the actual law. We cannot control that specific percentage of money going to the municipality. This is something new. This is the first time that in addition to the fine, in addition to potentially part of the fine being paid by a community project, this is something new where a community fund is being created at this level and put in the hands of the community. What kind of projects? You're right. Quality of life could be many, many, many things, but that's why we're putting this on you guys. And that's why, one, it's a way to be creative with some of the projects. At the same time, this steering committee is evaluating a process on how to score those proposals. And some of those ideas would be that to score the proposal on the three items, how much they benefit quality of life, how much the environment, and then score their proposals like that. That will be published in a couple of weeks. So, but I would be lying to you if I give you a specific example before the two that we have discussed, because just as for one of the nonprofits that you work for or that you work with, they may have a great idea that it's for them, it's very, very clear how much benefits environment or health or quality of life, but maybe someone else would have a different opinion. So again, we're putting this on the community, right? So,
Okay. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you for asking that question. It's one of the reasons why I am sitting on this committee, because of experiences with other of these sorts of agreements, not by DEP, but by other entities like the Allegheny County Health Department and the EPA Region 3 in experiences with U.S. Steel pollution violations. So there we have observed a fund being set up for violations at the Clairton Coke Works and the U.S. Steel Edgar Thompson plant. A community fund like this, where they're doing things like proposing a bike trail that runs along right by the polluting facilities, purchasing of dump trucks, park benches, and you know, those communities are in some ways communicating that this is money that U.S. Steel has given the community to do those things. So I'm highly aware of the potential for things to go off the rails, and I want to assure everyone here that my interest in sitting in this committee is to not allow that to happen. That we want to hear from you positive things that would make sense to invest in, so that we can write the parameters for the grant, so that it doesn't end up that we're, buying dump trucks and paving roads like they are from other agreements like this that haven't had those parameters around them. And those other agreements never had this degree of transparency. There were public hearings, people spoke out at those public hearings, and they went ahead and did things anyhow against what the public was asking. We don't want to see that happen this way, and the commitment to transparency is very important thus far.
I would also like to say that many of us have ideas about how we would like this money spent. And I've heard a lot of people tonight say this must be spent on this must be spent on that. And I can understand that perspective. However, we have to remember that it is not DEP or most of us up here who will be applying for funding. Some may be. But I think that this is a wonderful opportunity for Beaver County to grow by collaborating with each other, forming new partnerships, and applying for money together. Maybe we have an environmental agency and a nonprofit human service agency. Find a way to partner and apply for money and do greater things than supply bicycles to the community. And I'm just using that as an example. So many times in my dealings with people and talking to people, I think we look inward too often. And even in the steering committee meetings, there was a question, should we allow outside Allegheny County organizations to apply? And that's where we came up with the if you partner with. And some of the points that were made are, well, yes, there may be organizations in Allegheny County who could come and overpower a Beaver County program. That can only happen if the Beaver County program allows that to happen. Instead, we have to find organizations that have expertise in areas that we may not have and partner with them in some standpoint to make Beaver County better. And we can take the $4.9 million and turn it into so much more.
4.9 is the fine. Our pool of money is 5.
Okay, our pool of money is 5. Okay. Well, I don't know. But anyway, so that's my point. Let's look at the organizations in our county and encourage them to create new programs as part of this and to make us better.
Thank you, Marlo. Anyone else?
Yep. Will this funding be available for for-profit businesses? For example, a farm business whose products influence environment, public health, and quality of life?
No, for private entities. It's going to be for community-based organizations. We're working with the potential trustee who will be managing the grant, and a specific requirement, it's not confirmed, but a specific requirement to partner with a 501c3, could be out there. So.
Emily Wittrick-Bove. I am a resident of Brighton Township. First of all, thank you all for volunteering your time and your energy to do this for all of us and be our voice. Definitely appreciate it. A couple points. First of all, I do think that any air and water quality monitoring as part of that fund should be going towards our community locations, so schools, any public parks, places that we can do real-time monitoring. So if Shell is flaring, we all have access to see if our children are safe, our communities are safe, real-time. Secondly, I would ask that as you guys make all of these selections of who you're going to be going with, the programs that you are, monitoring, you select, that we do something like this so that we can actually get to know the organizations that you guys end up choosing or that end up being selected to receive the funding. So whether that's right at the start and then another 6 months in, so that we can all be engaged and ask questions and offer support so that these smaller organizations, to your point, receiving $250,000 could be really overwhelming. Having the opportunity for those organizations to sit down in front of all of us and say, we are going to need community involvement and support, and this is how we think you guys could get engaged. Third point, I do think that this is all great and obviously love everyone sharing your time, but definitely don't appreciate that Shell in the negotiations with the DEP limited the ability to hire to use this for legal counsel. I think honestly that's probably would have been the best use of funds for our county to be able to hire an actually strong environmental legal team so that we could hold Shell accountable when these things happen. I think it'll be great to have money, dumped into the community. It's a drop in the bucket for Shell. But how often are we going to be doing this? Every year? Every 6 months? Every quarter? Are we going to all as a community have to be utilizing all of your expertise and time instead of Shell actually taking ownership and us being able to hire the right legal counsel to hold them accountable and at least be a little bit more of a bug in their ear and a reason for them to think twice. Finally, I would say in your experience, how often does that happen? Is there anything in those legal terms that prevents the more money going into a community fund in the future? Is this like a one-time situation, or is this something that is going to be an ongoing solution as they continue to pollute our community?
So I'm going to answer your last question first. The agreement establishes that this fine and that this community fund is for the violation that happened right now. If there are more violations and some other stuff happens in the future, Shell will be subjected to more fines and to put more money. This is not Look, I understand the first reaction could be this is pay to pollute, and I understand it. But that happens usually when they are polluting, they pay a larger fine, and they continue doing that. Here is the specific fine and the specific funding for the mitigation fund for the current violations. And the COA is very clear to say that they will be fined and they will be, held accountable if this happens in the future. Coming back to one of your initial points, and again, sorry to be like this way, but I really want to have this very clear. We're not making the decisions. We're not selecting the projects. There will be a new advisory board that will be doing that. And believe me, this is the first of many that we will be having with you guys. To design the process, we didn't have enough time to schedule more. We may be able to do something virtually, like someone recommended before, in the next couple of weeks to have another round. But the next group and the group that will be deciding how the money is spent, they will be having public forums. You guys will have access to the projects that are being submitted, and we're going to share with you the evaluations and everything. So, yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Do we want to go to another one online?
Yep, sure. How does our community receiving this money affect the community's ability to continue to hold Shell accountable towards remediation of the current pollutions and the consequences on public health, as well as preventing future pollutions?
So that I'm laughing because, to be honest, the first reaction of some of the community leaders that I met, and this is directly, my experience, was we don't want to meet with you, or we don't want to be part of this process because that means that we are working with Shell now, or that means that we're not going to be allowed to continue doing our job. I'm not here to defend Shell. I'm not here to defend DEP to some degree, right? We can have a chat and you can disagree with me. And I'm not here, and I haven't been meeting with all of these amazing leaders to ask them to stop doing their job, right? That's why I wanted to be very clear at the beginning that this is a separate conversation, right? Even if I try, they are not going to listen to me if I tell them stop organizing or stop doing whatever. That's not my job against Shell or against DEP, right? The secretary of the DEP, Rich Negrin, has been very clear about empowering me to make that commitment. Governor Shapiro has been very clear about empowering me to make that commitment. We're not going to ask you, advocates, community leaders, to stop doing what you guys are doing. This conversation is specifically to talk about the community fund and how can we use that money. Shell, as any other private entity, I'm sure that they will have advertising and promotion, and they have the right to do it. We are not going to ask them to stop doing that, because just as we're not asking them to stop doing their job, we're not going to ask Shell to do that job. The specific disclaimer that we have discussed, and Matt has been very clear about it, will be included, that these projects will not be used for advertising, and if they are used, they will include a disclaimer that the money is coming from the COA, where Shell acknowledged the violations that they committed. So the answer is, we can disagree on the issues, right? Even the steering committee disagrees in some of the stuff, but we're not here to ask or to impose anyone what to do or what not to do outside of this specific project, right? Because one, they are not going to listen to me, but two, we would lose all the credibility that we're trying to build back. We're here to take the first step, not with one project, but at least to take the first step of hoping to get back your trust. Because let's be honest, Shell has done plenty to lose your trust, and DEP sometimes is not the best at communicating and keeping your trust. So this is the first step to hopefully solve that issue from DEP perspective. And if I try to ask any of you or any of them to stop protesting against DEP, I don't have any credibility at all to actually be successful running this program. If I ask them to stop doing any kind of advocacy against Shell, I will lose any kind of credibility to be successful on this program. So sorry for the long answer, but I really wanted to make sure that all of you guys here and online understand that we're not here to defend Shell. We're not here to defend DEP, again, to some degree, right? We are here to see how this fund can benefit you guys.
Hi, my name's Chris Leininger. I'm a resident of Beaver, Pennsylvania, and I have the great fortune to be a faculty member at the Community College of Beaver County in the Mascaro Construction Technology and Management Program. I also teach part-time up at Slippery Rock University in the Parks and Conservation Program. I want to applaud you guys for being here and shepherding this process that kind of resulted from some unfortunate things. But one thing I've learned in my life is that times of change and difficulty, uncertainty are also times of opportunity. And so I want to encourage the spirit of people bringing comments that this is an opportunity for us to address some things. And in particular, the individual from Vanport talking about the indigenous food garden, food forest idea, and the individual from Reforest Group who was talking about linking to environmental education. I'm concerned about the education of our children and the future of our county and the growth of our county. Beaver County is the only county in the United States that the Ohio River runs through. This county government has control of both sides of the river. If this happened just down the river, it would be a multi-state issue. It would be complex by an order of magnitude that is sometimes hard to comprehend. So we have an opportunity here. And the river does link us to Allegheny County. It does link us to West Virginia. We are a part of the greater community. And so I would like to see us take the opportunity to do an urban forest surrounding the plant, reforesting the hillsides that have been moved. I had the great privilege of attending Carnegie Mellon University to get my PhD, and I studied vertical gardens on buildings, food-producing vertical gardens on building facades that produce food in food desert areas while simultaneously reducing the temperature of the building facade as much as 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and reducing small particulates, PM 2.5, by as much as 5.6%. I know that there are plants that are miraculous in terms of their performance. There are plants and trees that can remove aromatic hydrocarbons from the soil and from the air. So I would encourage a multifaceted partnership with local institutions like Pitt, like Penn State, like CCBC, like Slippery Rock and others, engaging those institutions to provide matching funds, to pursue additional grants, to grow this pool of money, to have a really decisive impact on what's happening in Beaver County, and charting a course to the future, to a green economy, to a sustainable future, to a bright future that inspires our children to be proud of where they're from, to want to live where they're at. And sorry, I'm getting a little emotional even talking about it. And I think with green chemistry, with ideas of riverfront development, I know from what I teach that there's a group called the Outdoor Industry Association that talks about the outdoor recreation economy. In 2018, Pennsylvania had something like 219,000 jobs in outdoor recreation. We know that recreation and tourism and agribusiness are the leading industries in the state. Manufacturing is important. Oil and gas is important. If my family's in an accident tonight, I'm going to rely on plastics in the EMT to get them safe into the hospital. I appreciated the comments that we all have to bear responsibility. We all have an American lifestyle. We're all covered in plastic. We all use all of these products, and we know they're killing us. We know they're killing our world. There's microplastics in the blood of each and every one of us right now. I didn't ask for it to be there. I don't know who put it there. And whoever put it there won't take responsibility for putting it there. So we all have to change what we do. And it's an economic growth opportunity. If we have to transform all of these industries, that's a huge growth potential. And so linking to educational programs, linking to the other valid job employing sectors like the environmental sector are, I think, critical aspects of the educational aspect of this fund. Environmental health, quality of life, and public health. They're all pinned together. And I really appreciate the comments about the constitutional rights we have to environmental cleanliness, to live in a safe and healthy and economically viable community. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you for taking the time.
I just wanted to say these are some of the marvelous faculty we have here at CCBC. Thank you.
Go for it. Do we want to go to another question online?
Yeah, that's great. Will there be any type of project evaluation rubric or concrete objective determining factors published ahead of the project application window to help both organizations and the public understand how these projects and applicable funding will be chosen?
We're still deciding that process, but yes, we will have a website where all the projects will live. My understanding, and again, it's not confirmed, but my understanding is that if we go with one of the foundations as trustees that we're considering, they will include also all of the projects and applications in their website. So yeah, there will be transparency. We will be sharing the applications. We will be having public meetings where we're sharing with you what kind of projects we are receiving. And I'm saying we as I'm going to be the only constant in the next advisory board. But again, all of these will come the responsibility of the next group. So.
To that question, has been conversation around an encouragement that during the period between when the request for proposals is announced and when it is due, that there are opportunities to provide technical assistance and guidance to organizations to help them understand how to align with the rubric, how to align with the process that has been laid out. So figuring out exactly what that looks like, who's responsible to do that, how many of those meetings can happen is yet to be determined. But there is a commitment, at least by a number of folks on the committee, to make sure that we're helping one another, move these things toward a successful submission or as robust a submission as possible.
Thank you, Daniel. Hi.
Hi, everyone. My name is Hillary Flint. I'm a resident of Enon Valley, Pennsylvania, one of the last homes in Beaver County. I'm also digital specialist with BC MAC and vice president of the Unity Council for the East Palestine train derailment. So I just have a few questions today and then some recommendations as someone who's been a victim of chemicals like what is stored at the Shell plant. My first question is, will this money be available to volunteer or grassroots like organizations?
Again, we haven't decided. We haven't made the final decision, but because of the legal entity that will be hosting the grant, potentially can require that the organization funded is established 501c3. But that doesn't mean that one volunteer group or grassroots group could partner with a 501c3 to get access to that funding.
Great. And as Daniel mentioned, we kind of have a capacity issue here. So I was wondering if these funds will be available for multi-year use or if they will have a date that they have to be spent by.
That hasn't been decided yet. Again, to be honest, $5 million is not a lot of money. So we haven't decided that a specific idea of, one group gets, and I'm just giving an example, $1 million, $250 per year. All of those details, it's part of the amazingly amount of work that we have to do in the next few weeks to decide that. But we're taking notes and taking those recommendations into consideration.
Great. And then I have, go ahead, Heather.
I love that
Sorry. I just want to state that when you get the response of we don't know yet, that's a great opportunity for you to say what you think we should do with it. Just because we're saying we don't know, it's not a dismissive answer, but rather an opening for you to say how you feel those community funds should be used. And when we say we're leaning towards not having caps, that's an opportunity for you to say, I agree with that or I disagree with that and why. So please don't take an answer that isn't quite one as a stopping of you from continuing on trying to find answers, but make an opportunity for you to have our answers eventually be what you would like them to be.
Well, on Heather's point, I would like the opportunity for multi-year commitments and projects. There you go. And then one of my recommendations really just is my experience. So my home has tested positive for 2 of the major chemicals that were spilled on the train, and those same chemicals are right outside of Shell. I've had to advocate for myself now for 5 months. I've had to get a rental home for my family to stay in. And, there really hasn't been any entities that have been helping people outside of a certain radius. And it just leads me to really believe that these funds have to go for also private home testing, not just fence line monitoring. But if there is a case to be made for someone's home to be tested, particularly indoor air quality, because what these chemicals can do is get trapped in soft surfaces and then continue to off gas. So we need residents to have the ability to get that testing done and not have to search for, independent testing. And then number two, if that is found, if their homes have tested positive, even for lower monitors than OSHA standards, they should have the option to relocate. And I believe some of these funds should go to at least a temporary relocation, because only 8 households in Pennsylvania have received any type of assistance after this train derailment. And in that general vicinity, there's over 2,000 homes. So we have a big opportunity here to make sure what's happening to myself and my community doesn't happen to the rest of Beaver County.
Thank you, Hillary.
Thank you.
If I could just ask 2 questions. The first was just answered, but I want to respect the person who asked it.
Sure.
The question was also, will Shell continue to fund the project supported by this money, or will this be a one-time funding?
Again, Shell will allocate the money to the trustee, and that's the only relationship that they will have. So once again, this is not Shell, paying directly for the funds where they can come back and give another amount of money to the specific project. So I know that is semantics, but I want to be very clear with that. If there are future violations, if there are future issues, they can be held accountable again. They can, be imposed more fines, and it can be negotiated that they increase the money for this specific fund, and then an applicant that has been granted a project can come back and ask for another round.
And then the other question, there's still multiple left, but I'll just do this one for now. In the finalization of the project evaluation team supporting the steering committee, will there be individuals with applicable skills, experience, and knowledge in engineering, environmental, public safety, socioeconomic analysis, and management of complex industrial facilities?
Probably not all of those fields, but the answer is yes. We are going to try to choose the right and the qualified people to evaluate those projects. Yeah. Just the same way that we chose these members of the steering committee to design the process.
Hi, my name is Joanne Martin, and I live in South Beaver Township. And I'm associated with BC MAC and also a community project, Reimagine Beaver County, that's been active here in the community for a number of years, trying to advance alternatives to fossil fuel development and petrochemical projects. First, I want to say, and I'm going to speak directly to the protocol, so thanks for the emphasis to continue to speak to the protocol. But I want to emphasize that this is a mitigation fund, as I understand it. And I've heard several people tonight use the term grant. And I'm not sure that my understanding of a grant relates too closely to mitigation, in the sense that it masks the purpose. So going back to, I think it was Mark Dixon's point, and all 3 of his points were to lift up the fact that this fund is related to pollution from Shell. So if we start using terminology or advanced projects that really don't speak to the fact that this is the result of pollution and contamination, that kind of bypasses the fact that this is a mitigation fund. So I want to emphasize that. So projects that demonstrate alternatives to what Shell produces, I think would be an excellent addition to the protocol, and demonstrate that there are other industries, healthy industries for the environment, for public health, and for the community. And again, back to the protocol, we have 3 areas, so I wonder if the committee can agree, I don't know if it's equal, but really to stay within the guardrails and distribute those funds between health protective projects and environmental protective projects, and projects that improve the quality of life, which goes back to your points. I get that this is an opportunity for Beaver County to grow and collaborate. But again, this is a mitigation fund. This is in response to harms that have been brought to the community. And I think the best way to continue to lift that up, a disclaimer is great, but the best way to continue to lift that up is through the type of projects and the protocol and the way this is done. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Joanne. I'm taking notes, and you're right. I think that we continue to go back and forth and calling this in different ways. The protocol and the protocol implementation document will be very clear. The title is a mitigation fund. We will be calling this mitigation community projects. But thank you for that clarification. And between you and I, you are one of the community leaders that I missed. A lot of people recommended me to talk to you. So I will be following up very, very soon. Once again, I just didn't have time to catch up with everyone. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that you were not available when I was here 3 weeks ago. But I apologize for that. I'll follow up with you.
Okay. Hello, I want to thank you for holding this panel and all the hard work you are doing. I am, forgive me for mispronunciation, Nima Kodakarami, an assistant professor of health policy and administration at Penn State Beaver. I was wondering how I can get involved in the advisory board. I noticed you offered to the respected faculty of University of Pittsburgh.
Sure. Again, the invitation goes out again. Whoever wants to recommend individuals, that are qualified and that follow the discussion that we're having, I'm more than happy to receive recommendations. And I'll ask, Roger, if you don't mind including her name in the list of recommendations, of course. Okay.
Hi. How you doing? My name is Dom Tremarkey, Potter Township. Residents now overlooking the Shell plant. So I have 3 things that are my concerns, but I want to talk about the money afterwards. Number 1, I got the pollution. I sit right there on top. If I look out my window, my living room window, my bathroom windows, right at the plant, you can see it. Number 2, we have the lighting that Terry and I go to Potter Township meetings on occasions. Number 3, you're at the railroad. But the noise, and my commissioner here says there's nothing we can do about it because it's the railroad. Well, let me tell you, now they're parking bomb cars. I go on my deck goes over the hill, 2 foot over the hill. When I look down, and this lady will tell you, they're parking in bomb cars right. I was told when they first I was told there wasn't going to be none down there, then they put a coupling station. Then I was told all the bomb cars are going to be on the other side of 376, where they're going to park them. Now, on a daily basis, they're parked right. Somebody from Vanport takes a, I'm not good, I'm not a hunter. So takes a high-powered rifle, boom, shoots across the river and blows them. My house is gone. Will you tell me that? What would happen? I got concerns about that. But the money must go to the air quality. My great-grandchildren, my granddaughter live right across the street from me. And I have a lot of concerns, especially my great-grandson is 2. She's now pregnant, and she's going to have another one in December. And please, do everything you can to put monitors in. Help Dr. Lau out and make sure that our quality of air is it's never gonna. I grew up across the street from Shenangos, across the river from Shenangos. Come on, pollution. I'm 72 years old. I'm surprised I'm still breathing. They used to drop ash and have to come over with buckets and wash cars, believe it or not. That's what they used to do back in the 50s and the 60s and early 70s. So I worked in a mill. And like I said, now I'm worried about my grade. In 2020, when I bought my property, and I used to drive the guys into the mill. I drove the coach buses. I actually thought by 2023, we wouldn't be having this problem with the technology and everything else. As a little kid, I thought we'd have flying cars. It may come. It's coming. But yeah, come on, guys. Anybody that puts anything in there that has anything about pollution, lighting, or the noise, please look at it and do everything you can to put the money to it. Thank you very much.
Will do. Thank you. Online, please.
Yes, sorry. I appreciate that one of the projects needs to be about air quality monitoring, et cetera. However, will there be any type of guidelines so that this fund isn't mostly spent on projects that are only needed because of the existence of the plant? Is there a way to ensure that this fund is elevating the quality of life, even if the plant wasn't built, rather than just filling in the gaps, for example, additional air monitoring, that ideally would be covered by the industrial operator?
Let me go back to one point, right? This is a mitigation community fund that it was born and is being dictated by a specific legal agreement acknowledging violations by the plant. So we haven't discussed it, but saying that we're going to fund projects to improve the quality of life that, would have another, nothing to do with the plant. I'm not sure yet. I would let the community, the steering committee decide that, because I think that, once again, the funding is limited, right? We need to be conscious of that, and we need to understand that this is a mitigation community fund, like Joanne was mentioning. So funding projects that are not related to the issues with the plant, I'm not sure if that's the purpose of this fund, but the steering committee will talk about it. And like Heather was mentioning, if that person has any specific ideas, my answer is saying, I don't know. It's not about shutting that person down. It's, hey, we welcome ideas. So please get in touch with us.
Okay, we have several more. How will grant recipients report to the public how the funds were spent and report on the outcomes of the grant money?
We are developing the process that will include reporting. We're still going back and forth with the details. Ideas are welcome, but there will be a process to report on the grant money. Not a grant, thank you, on the funding for the mitigation project. I'm learning, I'm getting there. Thank you.
Can a portion of the funds be used to start a trust fund, foundation, or endowment that can annually fund projects? Can 1 million of the funding be used to create an interest accruing fund that can continually fund projects for public health, environment, and quality of life year to year?
That's an excellent question that hasn't been discussed yet by the steering committee, but that we need to discuss. Yep.
Okay. Could or will the committee have independent environmental and or public health experts whom they could consult with?
Yes, again, the advisory board who will evaluate the process, we will have experts providing advice.
Okay. Well, the overall...
Yeah, even this committee has this, right? And we're developing just the process, but yeah.
Will the overall public benefit and number of people that can enjoy, I'm sorry, I think I kind of misread that. Will the overall public benefit from and the number of people that can enjoy, including longevity of projects, impact, be considered for funding? Sorry, that's a little confusing.
Those factors will be considered on evaluating the projects, yeah.
Okay. Is there a way for the public to submit a name to the new funding committee that will be forming?
Yes, let's do this. I don't know if that person registered to the event on Zoom or if it registered on the event right. We'll be sending a follow-up email to everyone that registered, that we have those emails, and will include their specific guidance on how they can send names.
Okay. Taylor, you want to go?
Yeah, I'm just going to read some statements from people online.
If these are only general statements, then I'm going to have to clog you, Hillary. Sorry.
There is a recommendation in here. Is that okay? While I acknowledge there are other beneficial ways to spend the money, I feel strongly that we need to first and foremost put more measures into place that will serve to further hold Shell accountable. By doing this, we can mitigate the harm they are doing to our communities and, when necessary, collect further penalties from them. It is important to distribute the money in a way that will get more air monitoring in place. The monitoring should test for all possible HAPs and VOCs, in addition to particulates and any other detectable pollutants. We need to have the ability to independently access this information as quickly as possible in order to protect our families and those most vulnerable. We cannot rely on Shell for this information. We also can monitor health-harming pollution with camera technology, including filler equipment. All such technology to independently monitor Shell's pollution and further hold them accountable should be top priority.
Can I interrupt for 1 second?
Yeah.
Just to make sure to answer. The protocol of this community fund will not include elements to hold Shell accountable in the future. The COA does. The agreement signed by DEP and Shell already has those provisions included there. And in terms of monitoring, Dr. Lau, it looks like there are a lot of people supporting your project. Once again, the protocol will include that at least one project will be to independently monitor air quality. No?
Great. And the last bit of that was just making sure that some money is put away to support the maintenance of those air monitoring projects.
Thank you, Claire.
When will,
Please.
sorry.
To be honest, we haven't decided. I haven't decided on a specific number because I do believe that even when 16 sound like a lot, we need a couple of experts in the different areas to help us evaluate the projects. Maybe those experts are not formal members of the advisory board, but just someone that we can consult. But we're still going through that process. But the reality is going to be the final number will be based on the number of recommendations that I receive, making sure that there's specific expertise and that there is diversity on a lot of different issues. And if we don't get a big number of recommendations, the board will be on the smaller side, but always making sure that we have experts that we can consult with. For. They can be individuals. We have individuals here. We have executive directors. We have presidents. We have everything. No. Thank you. I will do my best to keep the same level of commitment to have this kind of representation in the next one. Sure. Just before we.
Okay. When will contact information be available to communicate with the steering committee and DEP?
There's a website already out there. We're still waiting for the vanity something. I really don't know about IT and stuff like that. But the website is live already in DEP. And again, there's going to be an email coming out in the next couple of days to everyone who registered to them.
Hi again. I just have two recommendations from two different people. So Aaliyah Thomas said that I believe these community funds should be mitigated to water and air monitoring and programs. Considering some of the harmful byproducts from the Shell plastic plant are already washing up into rivers bordering the community, I feel that it's vital that these funds go into place to support programs and products that would better protect or monitor air and water in the surrounding areas. I say this as a Monaca resident. I am fearful of water and air quality containing harmful carcinogens, chemicals, and products of the Shell cracker plant, and I think about that daily.
Again, those projects would qualify under the protocol. Yeah.
And then I have another comment from R. Nefshade. They would like to see this go towards PPE for residents, especially air filters and high quality masks, and 95 or higher. Shell is making Monaca an unsafe place to live without this protective equipment. And I would also like to ask real-time air monitoring and noise monitors.
All of that will be included. Yeah. Before we go back online, anyone else in the room? Just want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity. No? Sure. Online, please.
I joined the meeting late, so this question may have been already addressed. If not, why is the other $5 million being given to Potter Township when other whenever other areas are being affected by pollution from Shell much more. If this current money is already earmarked, is there any way that some of these funds can be reallocated or additional future monies can be considered for these more polluted areas?
Thank you for that question. Yeah, we talked about it before, but let me clarify this point again. The 4.9 and some change $million fine is that based on the current law, by law, Article 57, 25% of that fine has to be made available for the local municipality. In this case, the local municipality is Potter Township. If Potter Township decides not to use up to that 25% of the money, that rest, let's say that the 10% that is left is made available to Beaver County government to apply for that. That's based on law. We cannot change that. We cannot reallocate that. There's nothing we can do to change that. And this steering committee is only dealing with the other financial aspect of the agreement, that is the $5 million mitigation community fund.
Can you clarify the Shell or the Potter Township is not getting $5 million?
Thank you. Yes. Again, Potter Township is not getting $5 million, is not getting the $4.9 million of the fine. They can apply up to 25% of the fine. I'm really bad at math. It's around $1.2 million. And again, it's not mandatory that it goes to them. They can apply up to that amount. If they don't want to use the whole amount, then Beaver County could apply for the rest.
How many people will be on the new funding committee?
We don't know yet.
Okay. Is there any proof that Shell is able to carry out its project now and in the future without jeopardizing the health of our communities? If yes, can the proof be provided to the communities? If not, do the communities have the right to reject using these funds for anything other than to insist on holding Shell accountable throughout the life cycle of its project?
I'm not an expert to be able to say if there's proof for Shell to do that. Anyone on the steering committee, they are free to answer, but I'm not an expert. And yeah, the community is free to do whatever they want to do with this community fund, right? If there's a group that feels strongly about this issue and they don't want to receive any of the benefit of the $5 million, then they just don't apply for the money. It's that easy.
What role will DEP play on monitoring the plant ongoing? This includes staff assignment for water and quality testing. Will any of the funds be used by the state for funding DEP?
Once again, the fine goes to DEP. The $5 million, we don't touch it, right? What the next steps that DEP is going to take to monitor the plant, I'm more than happy to follow up. That's not my job. That's not my area. I'm sure that there will be in place monitoring as part of the agreement. As far as I know, it mandates to have bi-weekly meetings with Shell so they can report the different things happening in the plant. But once again, I'm not an expert, but happy to follow up with. Welcome back. Well, let's just...
Sorry. Okay. Were community representatives acting in the interest of the public health involved in deciding the legal parameters of how the funds would be spent? If not, that disenfranchises our communities in a way that Shell wouldn't be able to disenfranchise high-income communities. How can our communities be better represented in deciding legal parameters now and in the future?
The legal parameters, no, because that's a legal negotiation between two entities, between Shell and DEP. In an ideal world, should the community be able to provide feedback? Yeah, of course, but that's part of a legal process that we don't have control, right? That's specifically between in this case, the two parties involved in the negotiation, that's Shell and that's DEP. Now, we're taking notes, right? We're learning experiences from here. And if we're able to develop a successful process to use the Mitigation Community Fund, we're going to be able to use a similar process here to everything else, not only with Shell, but with other companies. And we're providing feedback to our legal team to incorporate some of these elements as part of their negotiations with the companies. But I don't want to lie to you, right? A legal determination and a legal agreement happens specifically between the department and the company that is in violation. Hi, welcome.
Hi, thanks. Wow, the pressure is really on you guys. You're setting the precedent. So thank you for this hard work that you're undertaking. I really appreciate you once again saying that this is mitigation money. I'd love to have parks and bicycles and all those other fun things like you were saying, Matt, but I think it's really clear that we should focus on mitigation. We have had harm done, and we have to make sure that we mitigate that and do whatever we need to do to make sure it doesn't continue. When we talk about monitoring, I hear this over and over again. I think what I'm not hearing are the words continuous and accessible in real time to the public. Those things are really important to me. Accessible, continuous, and available to the public. Because if we hear about it a month later, gosh, that's not much help. That's much help for us. And also I want to have some vehicle of seeing the unseen. So how about some FLIR cameras? We need operators. We need trained and certified operators. It's not enough to just go and see, gosh, it looks fine out here, smells fine out here, I don't hear anything, I don't see anything. No, we need to see the unseen. And like I was starting to say before, with VOC, measuring VOC as a group it's not the same as saying we've got formaldehyde, benzene, toluene in the air. That's something you really want to go, holy cow, I'm out of here. So that takes some special knowledge and special equipment. So I'd like to know that we are going to employ the science and the health experts that can help us with that. Perhaps people from CMU, the CREATE Lab, working with IEP, that they are working on how to monitor benzene. Maybe we can employ them. That would be fantastic. I want to employ the science and health experts that assess the specifics of the pollutants and the health effects of those pollutants. I would love to see a staffed hotline where I know people can call 24/7 and someone will pick up and listen to them 24/7, and that they will find out an answer, and that there will be someone required at Shell that we can also get real information. Those people that are answering the phone will have someone that will be required from Shell to say what's really going on. Not we'll get back to you at some point. Citizens deserve more than that. We also need to be connected to trained EMS staff. The EMS here need to know what to do. They need special training. This is terrifying to me that the EMS don't really know what to do. This is all brand new to them too. This is not okay. So I think that's a really important way to spend the money. I just have a question. Is Shell compliant now?
Let me get back to you. I don't know. I really don't know.
Okay, so I'm not sure, but what I heard was within weeks of them operating, they were out of compliance. And it took this incident many months later for a fine to be levied. So I don't understand why they could be out of compliance if this isn't true and there was not a fine. So, $5 million, oh, that's lovely. But then why are they still doing it?
So that's not part of the work that we're doing right now. Happy to have the separate conversation with you and connect you with the right staff at DEP to answer. I just want to be respectful to everyone's time. That's absolutely outside of the committee's doing, and to be honest, outside of my expertise. So
Okay, I'm just going to say this one little question. It's a little bit off track, but I just have to say, I just learned this last night at a training
very
party.
quickly because
I learned this last night at a dinner party that there was some homes that fell down a hill in Pittsburgh, and the railroad fined the city for these homes falling onto their railroad. And the city chose not to do something about it for a very long time. And eventually, it was a federal case, and eventually they said, you're not doing something about this? $50,000 a day. You want to do anything then? $1 million a day. Can't we do something like that with Shell when they're not in compliance? That's all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else online?
Yep, 2 more questions,
Sure.
unless someone else adds one in real quick. This is more of a follow-up comment, but shouldn't monitoring and having the correct monitoring equipment and programs in place be the baseline responsibility of the DEP and not the responsibility of nonprofits to implement projects to do this? I'm very much in support of organizations who are willing to do this work, but not as a way of a Band-Aid because of the state and the industrial operators not doing their job. I hope the fund money goes to innovative projects and not having to provide Band-Aid monitoring, etc., that the state and or Shell should already be doing.
So we are not band-aiding a project like that, but we are recommending it. But the difference is, and this has been an outcry from the community, that they want independent. And independent monitoring is independent from Shell and independent from DEP. Can DEP do a better job improving and more funding? Yeah, we're working on that. But the reality is that the cry out of the community is that they want, in addition to all of the different elements described here, that specific monitoring is independent from either party. So, last question.
Last question. Will funds be available only for nonprofit and community organizations, or will municipalities and local government bodies be eligible to apply for funds?
As long as they partner, again, we are about to confirm that. If we go with the foundation that will serve as the trustee, one of the requirements would be that the funding has to go to a 501c3. And just like we were answering the question to grassroots leaders and grassroots and volunteer groups and recommended to partner with a 501c3, if that's the case, then the local municipality inside Beaver County, like we discussed before, they will have to partner with a 501c3 to apply for the funding. Hi.
Hi, my name is Donna Tremarkey. I live right by the plant. My most problem is the noise. I had to move out of my master bedroom this week because I don't sleep. It's all night long trains, boom, 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 beep, 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 every 2 minutes. When he talked about the gun from across the river, I thought about it from my hand down to there. That's how bad it got. But I mean, it's bad. It's really bad. And it's ruining my life bad, really bad. So please consider doing something with this railroad noise. I mean, it's not polluting the air, but it's polluting my life bad, really bad.
Again, that project could qualify under the protocol that we're designing.
I want Shell to put windows in my home. I just built this home and I can't even live in it. It's bad. It's bad.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Danny, that's it?
Yeah, that's it. Yep.
Okay. Go for it. Oh, if it's Riverwise, like, no, shut it down.
All right, this comment is from the Riverwise live Facebook feed, and Craig Conforti said, and this has kind of been answered, but are food system projects going to be available for funding? So it seems like that's something that's on a lot of people's mind.
Again, if there's a 501c3 to a local organization that can make the case that a project like that will benefit the environment, health, or quality of life, yeah, they will be able to apply. Yeah. Members of the committee, any final thoughts, comments? Good. Well, not having any other questions, I'm not going to keep you longer of what you guys need to be here. I just want to once again thank the community college. All of your staff has been amazing. Thank you all of you guys for hosting. Big thanks to BC Mac and to Riverwise for helping us live stream this community forum and make sure that folks who weren't able to come here were able to follow up online. Once again, this is the first of many. We didn't have enough time to do more for the protocol, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to continue the conversation. And the members of the steering committee have had my commitment from day one. They can tell you individually or publicly that exactly the same way that I'm conducting this meeting, exactly the same way that I'm talking to you guys, It's the same way that I talk to them. It's the same way that I talk to Shell, and it's the same way that I talk to the secretary. And I want to make sure that at least this level of transparency, again, is the first step on moving things at DEP in the right direction. There's no way, once again, that one project, one community meeting is going to be able to solve all of the issues happening in the community. We know that, but we're trying to do things better. And I only hope that by showing you guys what we have done, by talking to you guys about the process, by making sure that the steering committee is sitting, here in front of you, that we are at least showing the level of transparency that you guys deserve. And with that said, once again, thank you for being here. I'm sticking around, happy to chat anytime that you guys want. We're going to reach out to all of you via email with my contact information, with making sure that you have access not only to the steering committee, to the website, but to the projects and to receive updates on how things are moving ahead. So with that, steering committee members in the public and here, everyone online, thank you for being here and, happy to be back.
One more question just came in. It just asked, sorry, it's a quick one.
I need to wrap up faster than
Could future meetings include daytime options as well?
We can try. Once again, the feedback that we got for most of you was, let's do it at night because that's when most folks can attend. But we can include an option too. Sure. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.